Imagine a vast frozen landscape stretching beyond the horizon. The wind cuts sharply across the ice and snow covers everything in sight. Long before the Clovis people, who are often described as the first Americans, human beings had already begun to explore these lands. Archaeology now tells us that the story of human arrival in the Americas is much older and more complex than we were once taught. For generations, history books described a simple narrative. Humans arrived about 13,000 years ago, crossing the Bering Land Bridge from Siberia into Alaska and then spreading across the continent. The Clovis culture, named after a site in New Mexico where spear points were first discovered, became the symbol of first human settlement. Their finely crafted tools and hunting strategies dominated our understanding for decades. But as scientists began digging deeper, literally and figuratively, evidence emerged that challenged this traditional view. Sites in Chile, Canada, and Brazil reveal that humans were present tens of thousands of years before Clovis. Monte Verde in southern Chile contains remnants of wooden structures, hearths, and food remains dating back 14,500 years. Here, people built homes, hunted, and gathered food long before the Clovis people existed. Imagine a small family tending a fire in the evening, children playing under towering ferns, and elders teaching survival skills and stories that would otherwise be lost to time. Even further north in the icy reaches of Yukon, Canada, the Bluefish Caves reveal butchered animal bones. Analysis shows that humans were processing meat and surviving in extreme cold 24,000 years ago. This evidence indicates not just the presence of humans, but also their adaptability and ingenuity in harsh conditions. Families had to understand the land, track animals, and work together to endure the cold. Each mark on a bone, each fire pit, tells a story of perseverance and human resilience. In Brazil, the Pedra Furada site pushes the timeline even further. Stone tools and fire pits indicate human activity 30,000 to 40,000 years ago. This region's evidence suggests that humans were living in South America long before the Ice Age ended, possibly navigating rivers, forests, and open plains to gather food and maintain small communities. Here, humanity's story is one of creativity and survival. Families learned to manipulate fire, shape stone, and organize daily life in ways that would allow them to thrive for generations. DNA research has added a new dimension to this story. Modern studies show multiple waves of human migration into the Americas. Coastal routes, ice-free corridors, and possibly maritime journeys suggest that humans were not limited to a single migration path. The genetic traces of Siberian populations, combined with evidence from Pacific Rim and North American sites, reveal a complex network of movement and adaptation. Despite mounting evidence, the Clovis first model held sway for decades. Many scientists dismissed pre-Clovis discoveries as unreliable or misinterpreted. But as interdisciplinary research incorporating archaeology, genetics, and geology progressed, the picture became clearer. Humans were present in the Americas much earlier than previously thought, and their story is far richer and more intricate than any single site can convey. These early humans were not just hunters, they were explorers, teachers, and community builders. They passed knowledge from one generation to the next, innovated with tools and fire, and shaped the landscape in subtle but meaningful ways. Each footprint left in the snow or soil represents a life of struggle, hope, and adaptation. Before the ice, before the Clovis culture, humanity had already begun its journey in the Americas. These first Americans were the pioneers of life on a new continent, laying the foundations for everything that would follow. Their courage, resilience, and curiosity remind us that history is not fixed. It is written by the lives of those who came before us, waiting for us to uncover it. As we move forward in time, the story of early humans in the Americas becomes even more fascinating. The evidence that has emerged challenges not only archaeology but also the way we imagine the lives of our distant ancestors. For centuries, Clovis spear points define the earliest human presence. Yet across continents, traces of pre-Clovis settlements reveal a far older and more intricate human story. Consider Monte Verde in Chile once more. Beyond wooden structures and hearths, researchers discovered remnants of plants and food that demonstrate a sophisticated knowledge of the environment. These early humans understood which plants were edible, how to preserve food, and how to make tools that could last for years. Children in these communities would have learned these skills from their parents, gaining the knowledge needed to survive and thrive. Every fire pit tells a story, every stone tool is a testament to human ingenuity, and every food fragment carries echoes of daily life long ago. In Canada, the Bluefish Caves continue to tell their story. Ice had preserved the evidence for thousands of years. Marks on animal bones suggest careful butchering techniques, and tools adapted for cold environments reveal the inventiveness of humans surviving under extreme conditions. Imagine the daily challenges faced by these early hunters, traversing icy landscapes, tracking game across snow-covered plains, and finding ways to protect their families from harsh weather. Their resilience and resourcefulness reflect a deeply human determination to endure, no matter the circumstances. Further south in Brazil, Pedra Furada provides a vivid glimpse into even earlier settlements. Evidence of controlled fire, rudimentary tools, and remnants of shelters suggest that humans were living in South America up to 40,000 years ago. Here, families may have gathered fruits and roots, hunted small animals, and shared stories around the glow of a fire. Their lives, though distant from ours in time, were filled with emotion, curiosity, and ingenuity. The challenges they faced shaped their communities and allowed knowledge to pass from generation to generation. What is most striking about these early populations is their adaptability. Humans did not simply arrive, they thrived in multiple environments, from tropical forests to icy tundras. The paths they took, whether along coastal shores, through ice-free corridors in North America, or perhaps even across open water, demonstrate a combination of courage, intelligence, and exploration. Every footprint left behind hints at a life of movement, curiosity, and discovery. Genetic studies support these findings. Modern DNA analysis shows multiple founding populations contributed to Native American ancestry. Siberian groups, as well as populations from the Pacific Rim, played a role in human migration into the Americas. These findings indicate that the movement of early humans was not a single event but a series of migrations over thousands of years, each adding to the diversity and richness of early American populations. Despite the mounting evidence, the academic community initially resisted these ideas. Pre-Clovis sites were often dismissed as misinterpreted or inconclusive. The Clovis first paradigm dominated textbooks, funding, and public understanding. Scientists faced significant skepticism when presenting findings that suggested humans were present far earlier than 13,000 years ago, yet the evidence could not be ignored indefinitely. As more sites were examined, and as DNA research progressed, a clearer picture of early human life in the Americas began to emerge. It is important to remember that these early humans were more than just makers of tools and hunters of game. They were teachers, parents, and storytellers. They learned from each other, adapted to new challenges, and created communities capable of enduring some of the harshest environments on Earth. These first Americans passed on knowledge, shaped traditions, and forged the foundations of human society in ways that would echo for thousands of years. The daily life of a pre-Clovis family would have been both challenging and deeply human. Children may have watched their parents fashion stone tools, learning the subtle techniques required to shape a hard rock into a cutting edge. Elders may have told stories around fires, teaching lessons about survival, cooperation, and the mysteries of the natural world. Communities would have depended on each member, sharing the labor of hunting, gathering, and maintaining shelters. Every action, from sharpening a blade to tending a fire, reflected intelligence, collaboration, and foresight. By reconstructing these lives, we gain insight not just into human presence but into human nature itself. Pre-Clovis peoples demonstrate qualities that define humanity: creativity, curiosity, resilience, and the capacity to teach and learn. These were people navigating a land unknown to them, responding to threats, seizing opportunities, and shaping a future for those who would follow. As archaeology uncovers more pre-Clovis sites, the timeline of human settlement in the Americas continues to expand. The discoveries in Chile, Canada, and Brazil illustrate that humans were adaptable, inventive, and deeply social. They were capable of survival in diverse climates, from tropical forests to frozen tundras. They moved across landscapes, forging paths that would eventually connect the entire continent. Each discovery reinforces the idea that human history is not a simple linear story, but a rich tapestry woven from countless individual lives and decisions. The narrative of early humans in the Americas is, therefore, not only a story of migration but also a story of humanity itself. It tells us about the courage of individuals, the cohesion of families, and the knowledge passed down through generations. Every artifact, every fire pit, and every footprint is a window into a life that once existed, reminding us that the first Americans were explorers, innovators, and storytellers.
As we reach the final chapters of this story, the picture of early humans in the Americas becomes even clearer and more profound. The evidence shows that the Clovis first model, long accepted as truth, is no longer sufficient to explain the complexity of human presence on this continent. The Americas were home to humans tens of thousands of years before Clovis, and these first Americans were far more resourceful, adaptive, and interconnected than we had imagined. Sites such as Monte Verde, Bluefish Caves, and Pedra Ferrada reveal a human story that spans thousands of years and thousands of miles. In Chile, families crafted shelters and prepared food from plants, animals, and rivers, developing skills that ensured survival in a dynamic environment. Children learned the art of fire-making and tool use, while elders passed down knowledge of hunting, gathering, and tracking. Each day was a lesson in cooperation, creativity, and resilience. In the icy reaches of Yukon, Canada, humans endured freezing temperatures, snowstorms, and limited resources. Marks on bones, carefully preserved by ice, show how these early hunters processed game and shared knowledge within their communities. These discoveries reveal that survival was not only a physical challenge, but also a social one. People had to communicate, cooperate, and plan for the future. Their ingenuity allowed them to thrive where many would have failed, leaving behind traces of a sophisticated and intelligent way of life. Further south, Pedra Ferrada in Brazil highlights the incredible adaptability of humans in tropical environments. Tools and fire pits dating up to 40,000 years ago suggest that early communities were capable of managing their environment, using fire for warmth and cooking, and crafting implements for daily tasks. Families gathered food, shared responsibilities, and maintained social bonds, creating a sense of community that was essential for survival. These early humans were inventors and caregivers, balancing the challenges of the wild with the needs of family and society. DNA studies reinforce the archaeological findings. Genetic evidence indicates multiple waves of migration into the Americas, with contributions from Siberian populations, Pacific Rim groups, and other unknown ancestral communities. These migrations were not singular events, they were continuous movements over thousands of years. Humans adapted to new environments, developed new technologies, and maintained cultural traditions as they explored an unfamiliar continent. Each migration added to the diversity and richness of early American populations, creating a tapestry of human life that is complex and deeply interconnected. Despite the overwhelming evidence, the Clovis first paradigm resisted change for decades. Pre-Clovis sites were often dismissed as anomalies, misinterpretations, or even mistakes. Scholars and researchers faced criticism when challenging established theories. Yet the persistence of evidence and advances in scientific methods, particularly radiocarbon dating, stratigraphy, and DNA analysis, eventually forced a reassessment. It became clear that humans had been present long before the Clovis era, and that their story deserved recognition. But beyond dates, tools, and migration routes, the story of pre-Clovis humans is a story of humanity itself. It is a story of families teaching and learning, of communities surviving and thriving, of knowledge passed down through generations. These were people who observed their surroundings, adapted to their challenges, and found ways to create meaning in their lives. Their survival depended not only on skill and intelligence, but also on relationships, cooperation, and shared purpose. Imagine a day in the life of a pre-Clovis family. A child learning to fashion a cutting edge from a stone, a mother preparing food over a fire, an elder sharing a story of distant lands and past hunts. Every moment was a lesson, every challenge an opportunity to innovate, and every discovery a small triumph in the story of survival. These individuals were pioneers in every sense of the word, laying the foundations for the future of human society in the Americas. Modern research continues to uncover new sites and evidence, further expanding our understanding of pre-Clovis life. Each discovery adds depth and nuance to the story, revealing the adaptability, creativity, and resilience of these early Americans. The picture that emerges is not of isolated hunter-gatherers, but of vibrant communities, capable of thriving in diverse and challenging environments. As we reflect on this journey, we see that history is not a simple, linear narrative. It is a rich tapestry, woven from the lives of countless individuals, each leaving behind traces of their existence. Pre-Clovis humans remind us that our story is long, intricate, and filled with courage, ingenuity, and hope. They were more than survivors. They were teachers, explorers, innovators, and storytellers. Before the ice, before Clovis, humans had already arrived in the Americas. They had crossed continents, faced extreme environments, and built lives filled with meaning and purpose. Their journey is the first chapter of humanity on this continent, a chapter written with courage, creativity, and resilience. The traces they left behind, stone tools, hearths, footprints, and stories, serve as enduring reminders that human life is defined not only by survival, but also by curiosity, cooperation, and the pursuit of knowledge. Through archaeology, genetics, and careful scientific inquiry, we can now witness a world that existed long before the Clovis people. A world of early humans forging a future in a land of ice, forests, rivers, and mountains. These first Americans were the pioneers, not just of a continent, but of human potential. The first storytellers, innovators, and dreamers who dared to live in a world waiting to be discovered. Imagine standing on the banks of the Mississippi River over 1,000 years ago. The air is thick with the sounds of life. People working, children playing, and the distant rhythm of drums echoing across the valley. Here in the heart of what we now call Illinois, a civilization flourished unlike any other in North America. This was Cahokia, the largest urban center north of Mexico, home to thousands of people with a culture built on ingenuity, organization, and vision. For centuries, the story of North America's ancient civilizations focused largely on the societies of Mesoamerica or the eastern woodlands. But Cahokia challenges these assumptions. At its peak, between 1050 and 1200 CE, Cahokia was a thriving metropolis, featuring monumental earthworks, complex social structures, and a culture of trade and ceremony that rivaled the great cities of the ancient world. The city's most striking feature is Monk's Mound, a massive earthen pyramid that rises 100 feet above the surrounding landscape. It is the largest prehistoric earthwork in the Americas and dwarfs many of the pyramids in Egypt in volume. Constructed without metal tools or beasts of burden, it represents an extraordinary feat of human labor and organization. Hundreds, perhaps thousands of workers moved countless baskets of earth to build these mounds, demonstrating a society capable of complex planning and cooperation. Cahokia was home to hundreds of other mounds, each serving a purpose. Some were platforms for elite residences and temples, others were burial mounds honoring leaders and warriors. The city's layout shows careful planning, aligned with celestial events, rivers, and natural features. Streets were wide and straight. Public plazas hosted ceremonies, and neighborhoods were divided in ways that facilitated governance and daily life. This was an urban center built with intention and vision, a city that expressed the values, beliefs, and power of its people. The inhabitants, often referred to as the mound builders, were skilled farmers, hunters, and artisans. They cultivated maize, beans, and squash, supporting a large population through advanced agricultural practices. They crafted tools, pottery, and ornaments, traded goods over vast distances, and participated in religious ceremonies that reinforced community and hierarchy. Their society was sophisticated, organized, and deeply connected to the land and river that sustained them. Trade networks extended hundreds of miles. Shells from the Gulf of Mexico, copper from the Great Lakes, and exotic stones and minerals were transported to Cahokia, reflecting the city's influence and its integration into a vast regional economy. Visitors and merchants brought new ideas, goods, and stories, enriching the cultural life of this thriving urban center. Cahokia's society also revolved around ceremonial life. Evidence of solar alignments, ritual plazas, and large gathering spaces suggests that religion and cosmology were central to everyday life. The city may have been ruled by powerful leaders whose authority was reinforced by ritual and ceremony. These leaders, residing atop mounds, would oversee events and guide the spiritual and political life of the people below. Despite its power and sophistication, Cahokia was not immune to challenges. Environmental pressures, resource management, and social tensions may have contributed to its decline. Over time, the city shrank. Mounds were abandoned, and the once thriving population dispersed. Yet, even in its fall, Cahokia left a lasting legacy. Its monumental mounds, planned streets, and sophisticated artifacts continue to speak of a society capable of immense achievement, creativity, and vision. As we explore Cahokia, we see more than just a city of earth and stone. We see the lives of people who dreamed, labored, celebrated, and governed. We witness families and communities navigating the challenges of life along the Mississippi, creating an urban environment that reflected their values, beliefs, and aspirations. Their story reminds us that North America, too, has a history of great cities, remarkable civilizations, and human ingenuity that rivals anywhere in the world. As Cahokia grew, so did its influence over the surrounding regions. The city was not an isolated settlement. It was the center of a complex network of communities, connected through trade, shared rituals, and political authority. Farmers in nearby villages supplied surplus crops. Artisans crafted goods that were sent across the Mississippi Valley, and ceremonial leaders maintained spiritual and social cohesion. Cahokia's success relied on the collaboration of thousands of people, each playing a role in sustaining urban life. Monk's Mound, towering above the city, was more than a symbol of power. It was the stage for religious, political, and social life. From its summit, leaders would observe the movements of the sun, plan seasonal festivals, and oversee the organization of the city. Alignments with solstices and other celestial events indicate that Cahokia's residents had a sophisticated understanding of astronomy, linking their spiritual beliefs with the natural world. This attention to cosmic order reinforced the city's authority and connected the community in shared ceremonies and rituals. The population of Cahokia is estimated to have reached 10,000 to 20,000 people at its height. For context, this made it larger than many European cities of the same period. Streets were carefully planned, with public plazas serving as venues for gatherings, markets, and ceremonial events. Neighborhoods were divided to facilitate governance and daily activities, showing an extraordinary level of urban planning and social organization for a pre-Columbian society in North America. Agriculture was central to Cahokia's prosperity. Corn, beans, and squash, the three sisters, formed the backbone of the diet, while hunting and fishing supplemented food sources. Fields were carefully managed, and irrigation techniques allowed communities to support a large, sedentary population. The city's success depended on balancing agricultural productivity with population needs, and evidence suggests that Cahokia's planners were acutely aware of these environmental pressures. Trade extended far beyond the immediate region. Artifacts made from seashells, copper, and other exotic materials indicate extensive networks reaching from the Gulf of Mexico to the Great Lakes. Items such as mica, shark teeth, and obsidian traveled hundreds of miles to Cahokia, bringing wealth, prestige, and new ideas. Traders and pilgrims arriving from distant lands brought not only goods, but also cultural practices and stories, enriching the social fabric of this remarkable city. Cahokia's ceremonial life was equally impressive. Large plazas and ritual spaces hosted public gatherings, games, and religious ceremonies, that reinforced social hierarchies. The city's leaders were likely spiritual as well as political figures, legitimizing their authority through ritual performance, symbolic architecture, and control over resources. Mounds served as platforms for temples and elite residences, creating a visible and lasting hierarchy that could be observed by all who lived in or visited the city. Artisans contributed to Cahokia's cultural vitality. Pottery, carved figurines, and elaborate ornaments reveal both skill and symbolic meaning. Designs often reflected cosmological beliefs, social status, or clan identity, emphasizing that Cahokia was not only a functional city, but also a place of artistry, culture, and spiritual expression. Every artifact tells a story of human creativity, social connection, and reverence for both community and nature. However, life in Cahokia was not without challenges. Maintaining such a large urban center required careful management of resources, social cohesion, and environmental awareness.
Evidence of flooding, erosion, deforestation suggests that the city faced ecological pressures. Population density and social complexity may have led to internal tensions, requiring leaders to navigate conflicts, enforce rules, and maintain unity. The ability to adapt to these challenges was central to Cahokia's survival and growth. Despite its sophistication, Cahokia's decline began after 1200 CE. The reasons are still debated, but scholars point to a combination of factors: environmental changes, overuse of local resources, social tensions, and perhaps disease or conflict. As the city shrank, mounds were abandoned and populations dispersed to smaller communities across the Mississippi Valley. The urban center faded, but the influence of Cahokia persisted in cultural traditions, mound-building techniques, and regional trade networks. Even today, the legacy of Cahokia endures. Archaeological research continues to uncover insights into the lives of its inhabitants, their social structures, and their remarkable accomplishments. Modern visitors can walk among the mounds, imagine the daily rhythms of the city, and marvel at the scale of human effort required to construct these monumental earthworks. Each mound, each plaza, each artifact reminds us of a people who dreamed, built, and thrived in a world without metal tools, written language, or wheeled transport. Cahokia's story is not just a tale of architectural achievement. It is a story of human ingenuity, community, and resilience. Families lived, worked, and celebrated together. Leaders organized labor and rituals, and communities developed social norms that allowed thousands of people to coexist successfully in a thriving urban environment. The city was a testament to the power of collaboration, creativity, and vision. As we reflect on Cahokia, it becomes clear that North America has a rich history of urbanism, culture, and human achievement. The mound builders were architects, engineers, farmers, traders, and spiritual leaders. Their accomplishments rival those of civilizations across the globe during the same period. By studying their society, we gain insight not only into North America's past, but also into the universal qualities that make human civilization possible: ingenuity, cooperation, and imagination. As Cahokia's influence reached its peak, the city became a beacon of culture, politics, and religion in the Mississippi Valley. From its massive mounds to its carefully planned plazas, Cahokia was more than just a settlement. It was an urban marvel, a center where thousands of people lived, worked, and celebrated together. The rhythms of daily life, from farming to crafting, trading to ceremonial gatherings, created a dynamic society that left an enduring legacy. Monk's Mound remained the centerpiece, a towering testament to the ingenuity and coordination of Cahokia's builders. Its sheer scale, rising over 100 feet above the valley, required meticulous planning and thousands of hours of labor. Construction involved transporting countless baskets of earth, shaping terraces, and ensuring structural stability. The mound symbolized not only political power, but also the connection between the people and their spiritual world. From its summit, leaders observed the heavens, marking solstices, planning seasonal events, and overseeing the activities of the city below. Life in Cahokia was deeply intertwined with nature and cosmology. Streets and plazas aligned with the movements of the sun and moon, reflecting a sophisticated understanding of astronomy.
Ceremonial sites indicate that the city's leaders guided religious observances, festivals, and public rituals that reinforced social cohesion and hierarchy. The integration of urban design, ritual life, and community governance shows that Cahokia's inhabitants were not merely surviving. They were shaping a complex and enduring civilization. Families were at the heart of Cahokia. Children learned farming techniques, tool making, and ceremonial traditions from their elders. Mothers and fathers managed food, crafts, and daily survival, ensuring that knowledge and skills were passed to the next generation. Social structures allowed for cooperation on a massive scale. From the organization of labor for mound construction to coordinated planting and harvesting. These systems created a society capable of sustaining tens of thousands of people over decades. Artisans contributed to Cahokia's vibrancy through pottery, figurines, and ornamental objects, often reflecting spiritual beliefs, clan identities, and social hierarchies. These items traveled far and wide through extensive trade networks, demonstrating Cahokia's influence over hundreds of miles. Shells from the Gulf of Mexico, copper from the Great Lakes, and exotic minerals found their way into the city, connecting its people with distant cultures. Trade not only provided resources, but also ideas, stories, and cultural practices that enriched everyday life. Yet maintaining such a massive urban center presented challenges. Environmental pressures, including flooding, deforestation, and soil depletion, tested the city's resilience. Social tensions and population density required careful governance to prevent unrest and ensure the continuity of civic and ceremonial life. The success of Cahokia depended on balancing human ambition with environmental realities, a task its leaders navigated with remarkable skill. By the 13th century, signs of decline became evident. Population numbers decreased, some mounds were abandoned, and ceremonial life diminished. Scholars debate the causes, citing ecological strain, climate changes, social upheaval, or external pressures. Nevertheless, the achievements of Cahokia endured beyond its decline. Its mounds, artifacts, and cultural imprint remained, influencing neighboring communities and shaping the history of North America. The story of Cahokia is not just a tale of urban development. It is a testament to human creativity, ingenuity, and resilience. It reminds us that societies can flourish even without metal tools, wheels, or written language. The mound builders were farmers, artisans, engineers, leaders, and spiritual guides, all roles necessary to maintain a thriving urban civilization. Their accomplishments rivaled those of contemporary cities across the world, and their story is a vital part of our understanding of human history. Walking among the mounds today, one can almost hear the echoes of ancient life. Children's laughter, the rhythm of drums, the voices of elders teaching lessons. These sounds paint a vivid picture of a society that valued community, knowledge, and spiritual connection. Cahokia was a place where human ambition and ingenuity transformed the landscape, creating a civilization whose legacy endures across centuries. The rise and fall of Cahokia teaches us that urban life is not simply about buildings or population. It is about people, relationships, and shared purpose. Leadership, collaboration, and belief systems allowed thousands to thrive in a complex social environment. Even in decline, the lessons of Cahokia remain relevant. Human societies are capable of incredible achievement when guided by vision, cooperation, and creativity. Cahokia's story also reminds us that history is not limited to well-known civilizations in Egypt, Mesopotamia, or Mesoamerica. North America, too, was home to monumental urban centers, visionary builders, and vibrant communities. The mound builders' achievements demonstrate that human innovation and cultural complexity were global phenomena, not confined to any single region. As we conclude this journey through Cahokia, we see a civilization that pushed the boundaries of what was possible in pre-Columbian North America. It was a city of dreams and determination, where ordinary people contributed to extraordinary achievements. The mounds, plazas, and artifacts are enduring symbols of ambition, creativity, and resilience. Cahokia was not merely a city. It was an empire of the sun, shining brightly in the Mississippi Valley, leaving an indelible mark on the history of humanity. Imagine standing at the edge of a vast canyon, the wind carrying centuries of silence, the shadows of ancient stone structures stretching across the desert floor. Here, in the heart of the American Southwest, the Puebloan people once built cities that defy imagination. These were not ordinary settlements. They were monumental great houses, crafted with remarkable precision, aligned with the sun, the stars, and the landscape itself. For centuries, Chaco Canyon and Mesa Verde remained mysteries. Archaeologists were astonished by the scale, sophistication, and planning of these stone cities. Multi-story buildings, some with hundreds of rooms, were constructed with tools far simpler than what we imagine. Yet, the precision of masonry, the alignment with celestial events, and the integration into cliffs and mesas suggest a culture deeply aware of its environment and the cosmos. At Chaco Canyon, massive stone structures rise from the desert floor, connected by roads that stretch tens of miles. These roads are not merely pathways. They signify trade, communication, and ceremonial importance. Great houses such as Pueblo Bonito housed hundreds of people, and their layout reveals a level of urban planning that rivals contemporary civilizations across the globe. The great houses were more than homes. They were centers of society, ceremony, and governance. Kivas, the circular subterranean rooms, served as ritual spaces, gathering places where leaders, priests, and communities connected with the spiritual world. Astronomy played a crucial role. Buildings were precisely aligned with solstices and lunar cycles. The movements of the sun and moon guided planting, harvesting, and ceremonial calendars, linking human activity to the cosmos in a way that speaks of profound understanding and purpose. Mesa Verde, carved into cliff faces, adds another layer of wonder. Homes built into natural alcoves required ingenuity and adaptation. Families climbed ladders to access their dwellings, while artisans and builders shaped stones to fit perfectly together. Every detail, from doorways to ventilation, reflected thought, skill, and communal effort. These were communities living in harmony with cliffs and mesas, using the natural landscape to protect, shelter, and sustain themselves. The Puebloan people were also skilled farmers. They cultivated maize, beans, and squash in arid conditions, creating sophisticated irrigation systems and terraced fields. Water management was crucial in a desert environment, and their ability to grow food sustainably supported large populations living in these monumental structures. The combination of farming, craftsmanship, and architectural ingenuity reveals a civilization capable of extraordinary achievement. Trade and cultural exchange extended far beyond the canyon walls. Artifacts of turquoise, shells, and exotic stones indicate networks reaching across hundreds of miles. These connections brought not only resources but also ideas, ceremonial knowledge, and social influence. Chaco Canyon and Mesa Verde were hubs of culture, religion, and commerce, a civilization interwoven with its environment and neighbors alike. Yet, despite their accomplishments, these great cities were mysteriously abandoned. By the 13th century, the Puebloan people began leaving Chaco Canyon and Mesa Verde. Scholars speculate about climate change, drought, resource depletion, and social upheaval. But no single explanation suffices. The departure was sudden, leaving behind monumental architecture that continues to puzzle historians and archaeologists. Even in abandonment, the legacy of the Puebloans endures. Their buildings, roads, and agricultural techniques reveal a society that blended innovation, spirituality, and adaptation. They demonstrate human ingenuity in one of the harshest landscapes on the continent, showing how culture, knowledge, and community can thrive under challenging conditions. To walk among the ruins today is to step back in time. One can imagine families moving through kivas, artisans shaping stone, and leaders observing the heavens to guide communal life. These are traces of a society where every stone, every alignment, every pathway was deliberate, crafted with purpose, vision, and care. The Puebloans were architects not only of stone, but of culture, knowledge, and human connection. As we delve deeper into the mysteries of Chaco Canyon and Mesa Verde, the ingenuity of the Puebloan people becomes ever more apparent. These were not simple desert dwellers. They were master planners, astronomers, and engineers who created complex communities in a challenging environment. The precision of their stonework, the scale of their buildings, and the alignment of their structures with celestial events reveal a civilization deeply attuned to both earth and sky. Pueblo Bonito, one of the largest great houses at Chaco Canyon, contains hundreds of rooms arranged in a D-shaped plan. Its construction required meticulous coordination, with workers moving thousands of stones and timbers to create multi-story structures that could endure centuries. Some walls were over a meter thick, and timber beams were sourced from forests tens of miles away. The level of effort and organization demonstrates a society capable of large-scale project management without written language or wheeled transport. Astronomical alignment was central to Puebloan architecture. Many buildings face the rising and setting sun during solstices, while others align with lunar cycles. These alignments were not merely symbolic. They guided planting, harvesting, and ceremonial activities, ensuring that society remained in harmony with the natural world. Leaders and priests likely observed the skies from the rooftops or kivas, timing festivals and agricultural cycles with precision that would have amazed even later civilizations. Kivas, the circular subterranean ceremonial rooms, were the spiritual heart of Puebloan society. Adults and children alike participated in rituals that connected them to ancestors, the cosmos, and the cycles of nature. These spaces fostered social cohesion, teaching generations the values, knowledge, and traditions that sustained their communities. The very act of entering a kiva was a passage into cultural memory, connecting individuals to centuries of Puebloan history. Mesa Verde adds another dimension to this story. Homes built into cliff alcoves required architectural creativity and careful planning. Families climbed ladders between terraces, carried water and food along narrow paths, and adapted to vertical living in ways that remain remarkable today. Each stone was placed deliberately, every doorway and passage carefully measured, reflecting not only functional needs but also deep respect for the surrounding landscape. These cliff dwellings exemplify how humans can harmonize construction with nature, creating shelter that is both practical and enduring. Agriculture sustained these communities in an otherwise arid environment. Maize, beans, and squash, the three sisters, were cultivated in fields and terraces, supplemented by wild plants and small game. Water management techniques, including check dams and irrigation channels, allowed the Puebloans to support larger populations than the desert alone would suggest. The ability to grow and store food ensured the stability and longevity of these communities. Trade networks stretched across vast distances. Shells from the Gulf Coast, turquoise from the southwest, and exotic stones and minerals traveled into Chaco Canyon and Mesa Verde. These materials were not only practical, they carried cultural and spiritual significance. Objects from distant lands symbolized connection, status, and shared tradition, weaving the Puebloan people into a broader web of regional interaction. Despite these remarkable achievements, the Puebloan cities were eventually abandoned. By the late 1200s, evidence shows a gradual exodus, leaving behind monumental architecture and tools, but little explanation. Climate change, prolonged drought, resource scarcity, and social pressures may have contributed. Yet the precise reasons remain a mystery. Families left their homes, taking knowledge, stories, and traditions with them, while the great houses and cliff dwellings stood as silent witnesses to a vanished civilization. The abandonment, however, does not erase their legacy. The alignment of buildings, the ingenuity of construction, and the adaptability of these communities continue to inspire awe. Archaeologists and historians study the ruins not merely for artifacts, but for insight into human resilience, creativity, and social organization. The Puebloans were capable of thriving in one of the most challenging environments on the continent, leaving lessons that resonate even today. Daily life in these canyon cities was a delicate balance of work, ritual, and family. Children would learn farming and masonry skills, apprentices would study the intricate stonework, and elders would teach oral histories and ceremonial knowledge. The interplay between practical survival and spiritual guidance ensured that communities remained cohesive and capable of sustaining themselves over generations. Every act, from carrying water along cliff paths to observing the stars, reflected an integration of human ingenuity with environmental and cosmic awareness. The Puebloan mystery reminds us that human achievement is not measured solely by written records or monumental empires. It is also reflected in communities that adapted, innovated, and thrived in challenging landscapes. Chaco Canyon and Mesa Verde stand as enduring symbols of human creativity, cooperation, and the quest to understand our place in the cosmos. As we reach the final chapter of the Puebloan story, the scale of their achievements becomes even more remarkable. The great houses of Chaco Canyon and the cliff dwellings of Mesa Verde were not merely homes. They were monuments of human ingenuity, social organization, and spiritual devotion. Every stone placed, every room designed, and every alignment with the sun or moon tells the story of a civilization deeply aware of its surroundings and determined to thrive. Life in these canyon cities revolved around community, ceremony, and survival. Families worked together to construct buildings, farm arid land, and manage scarce water resources. Artisans shaped stones with precision, creating walls that have lasted centuries. Farmers cultivated crops on terraces and in small fields, using knowledge passed down through generations. Spiritual leaders observed celestial cycles, guided ceremonial life, and reinforced social cohesion. In every aspect of daily life, the Puebloans blended practicality with purpose, labor with ritual, and survival with culture. The mysterious roads of Chaco Canyon reveal the broader influence of this civilization. Stretching tens of miles beyond the city, these roads connected outlying communities, ceremonial centers, and resource locations. They facilitated trade, communication, and the movement of ideas. Shells from the Gulf Coast, turquoise from distant mountains, and exotic stones flowed along these routes, linking communities across the Southwest. This network demonstrates that the Puebloans were not isolated. They were part of a regional civilization, coordinated and connected over vast distances. Astronomy remained central to their culture. Buildings were aligned to solstices, equinoxes, and lunar cycles. These celestial connections were more than symbolic. They structured agricultural calendars, guided ceremonies, and provided a rhythm to daily life. Observing the rising or setting sun or tracking the moon's passage informed planting and harvesting decisions, while reinforcing the spiritual worldview that connected humans to the cosmos. Yet, despite their sophistication, the great houses and cliff dwellings were eventually abandoned. By the late 1200s, prolonged drought, environmental stress, and social pressures likely forced families to relocate. They carried with them the knowledge, traditions, and skills that had sustained generations, leaving behind monumental stone cities as silent witnesses. Archaeologists today continue to debate the reasons, but the mystery endures. Why did such a thriving and technologically capable civilization suddenly vanish from these iconic landscapes? Even in abandonment, the Puebloan legacy is profound. Their stone cities, aligned with the heavens, demonstrate a level of planning, craftsmanship, and environmental understanding that inspires awe. Modern visitors walking among the ruins can imagine the rhythm of life. Children climbing ladders to reach homes, artisans shaping stone, elders teaching sacred stories, and communities gathering in kivas for rituals that connected earth, sky, and human life. These traces remind us that civilization is not only measured by empire or conquest, but also by cooperation, creativity, and adaptation. The Puebloans were architects in every sense, architects of stone, of society, and of knowledge. Their achievements reflect human resilience, the ability to adapt to harsh landscapes, and the drive to create order and meaning in the world. By building monumental cities in the desert, they demonstrated that human ingenuity can flourish even in challenging environments. Their alignment with the cosmos, mastery of agriculture, and social organization are lessons in the capacity of humans to harmonize life with nature. We can also learn from the ephemeral nature of these cities. Despite centuries of craftsmanship and planning, the great houses were abandoned, reminding us that societies are vulnerable to environmental pressures, climate changes, and social challenges. Yet, the knowledge and culture carried forward by the people endured, showing that human achievements are not only measured by buildings, but by ideas, traditions, and stories passed through generations. As we leave the canyons today, the Puebloan mystery continues to inspire wonder. Their cities are silent yet eloquent, telling a story of ambition, spirituality, and adaptation. They are monuments to human creativity, courage, and perseverance. A civilization that harmonized architecture, astronomy, and agriculture in ways that still captivate our imagination. The story of Chaco Canyon and Mesa Verde is ultimately a story of human potential.
It reminds us that humans are capable of incredible achievements, whether building monumental stone cities, cultivating harsh landscapes, or connecting with the cosmos. The Puebloans were innovators, dreamers, and survivors. Their legacy challenges us to reflect on the ways humans shape the environment, create culture, and leave enduring marks on the world. In the end, the great houses and cliff dwellings are more than archaeological sites. They are testaments to human vision and perseverance. The Puebloan mystery remains a powerful reminder that even in the harshest landscapes, humans can create communities of beauty, purpose, and lasting influence. Their story endures in the stones, in the skyward alignments, and in the imagination of all who walk among the canyons today.
Long before the first European ships touched the shores of North America, long before the rise of pyramids in Mexico or the birth of the Inca Empire, a different kind of civilization was quietly shaping the destiny of the northern world. Their story begins not with kings sitting on golden thrones or sprawling empires drawn on ancient maps, but with silent forests, icy winds, and a secret buried beneath the earth. A secret that glowed red when struck with fire, a metal so pure that it needed no smelting, a resource so rare that even the great civilizations of the Old World fought wars to control it. This was the copper of the Great Lakes, and the people who mastered it have become one of history's most overlooked mysteries. For thousands of years, a forgotten network of indigenous miners, traders, and artisans dominated this northern frontier. They were not primitive wanderers. They were engineers, explorers, innovators, people who understood metallurgy long before Europe's Bronze Age unfolded across the Atlantic. Their minds stretched for hundreds of miles across the shores of Lake Superior. Their tools have been found scattered across half a continent. Their legacy, quiet, enigmatic, and powerful, challenges everything we thought we knew about early North American civilization. To understand their world, we must begin at the edge of an ancient lake. Imagine a time nearly 7,000 years ago, a period when ice was still retreating from the northern forests. In the Great Lakes region, the climate was fierce. Winters were long and brutal. Summers were short but lush. Gigantic cedar and birch trees lined the shores, while caribou and moose wandered through thick fog. But beneath that landscape lay something extraordinary, some of the purest natural copper on Earth. Unlike most copper deposits which must be extracted through smelting, the copper here existed in massive slabs, naturally metallic, naturally workable, almost waiting for human hands. And people came. Archaeologists call them the old copper culture, but in reality, they were far more than a culture. They were innovators of a metalworking tradition that might be one of the oldest in the world. They carved deep pits into rocky ground, lifting out gigantic nodules of raw copper weighing hundreds of pounds. They hammered the metal on stone anvils, shaping it into tools, weapons, fishing hooks, knives, chisels, and ornaments. They heated it with fire, cooled it in water, and refined it with a method that resembles forging used in later civilizations. It was not simple craftsmanship, it was metallurgy. And what they created did more than shape their own communities, it shaped an entire continent. Each discovery from these ancient mines raises new questions. Some pits stretch so deep that it would have taken thousands of work hours to complete. Others contain remnants of wooden scaffolding, stone hammers, and charcoal used for heating the metal. Across the shores of Isle Royale and the Keweenaw Peninsula, archaeologists estimate there were over 10,000 mining pits. But here is the mystery that stunned historians. The amount of copper extracted from these mines would have filled hundreds of tons, yet only a small fraction of that amount has ever been found. Where did the rest go? Was it lost, buried, melted down over centuries, or traded? The truth might hint at a vast trade network stretching farther than anyone expected, linking distant tribes, reaching down the Mississippi River. Perhaps even connecting to early Mesoamerican cultures. Because copper items from the Great Lakes have been discovered thousands of miles away in Ohio, Florida, the Great Plains, even near the Gulf of Mexico. These artifacts were more than tools, they were symbols. They traveled from hand to hand, tribe to tribe, forming connections across the ancient world long before recorded history. Some historians believe this network may have been one of the oldest long-distance economies in North America. A trade system built not on written contracts or empires, but on relationships, craftsmanship, and trust. But the deeper mystery remains: why did this copper industry rise and then suddenly fall? For thousands of years, the Copper Kings, though they never saw themselves as kings, thrived in the northern wilderness. Their tools shaped daily life, their minds dug deeper each generation. Their trade routes expanded like invisible rivers of exchange. Yet around 3,000 years ago, something changed. Suddenly, the mines were abandoned, tools disappeared, trade routes shifted. The metal that once defined a civilization fell silent. What happened? Some theories speak of environmental changes, cooler climate, shifting forests, or rising waters that flooded key mining areas. Others suggest social changes, new tribes, warfare, or migration. Some believe advanced copper may have been replaced by new materials or new cultural traditions, but the truth is still hidden. The silence of these people, no written language, no monuments, no preserved myths, makes their disappearance one of the greatest archaeological mysteries in American prehistory. They left behind no empire, no capital city, no palace ruins, yet they left something else, something even more powerful. They left the memory of innovation, of human adaptation, of a civilization that thrived in a place where survival alone was a challenge. And they left a question that echoes across history: how advanced were they? Because when archaeologists study old copper culture tools, they find something striking. These early Americans knew how to cold hammer, anneal, strengthen, and temper metal, techniques similar to those used in ancient Egypt, Mesopotamia, and the Mediterranean. Yet these Great Lakes societies developed these skills independently. No outside influence, no borrowed technology, just pure human ingenuity. This realization forces historians to rethink one of the biggest assumptions about North American history: that the continent lacked early metallurgy. The Copper Kings prove otherwise. They show us a world where knowledge flourished without written records, where innovation emerged from necessity, and where human creativity carved a place in the wilderness long before history began writing its own stories. But to truly understand their brilliance, we must go deeper into their culture, their daily lives, and their mysterious rise to power, because their story is only beginning. To understand the Copper Kings, we must step deeper into their world, into the forests they walked, the waters they crossed, and the knowledge they carried from generation to generation. Their civilization did not leave written texts, but their fingerprints remain etched into the landscape, on every stone hammer, every copper blade, and every mine that still scars the ancient ground. Imagine a typical day for a community living near the Great Lakes thousands of years ago. The sound of water crashing onto rocky shores echoed in the morning air. Children helped gather berries while hunters prepared for long journeys through dense pine forests. But some men and women had a different task, one far more dangerous and far more sacred. They were the metalworkers. Every mine began with listening. Ancient miners placed their ears against the stone, tapped gently with cobblestone hammers, and searched for the hollow sound that revealed buried copper veins. Once located, the community worked together. They built wooden fires directly against the rock, letting the heat expand and crack the stone's surface. Then, using cold water, they shocked the heated rock, causing it to fracture and expose the copper beneath. This technique, known as fire setting, was used by advanced mining cultures worldwide. Yet here it was, practiced independently by people living thousands of miles from Europe or Asia. Once exposed, the copper was pried out using bone or stone wedges. Some pieces were small enough to lift by hand, others were enormous, weighing hundreds of pounds. Massive copper masses, sometimes larger than a person, lay half buried in the earth, waiting to be shaped into tools that would travel across the continent. But before any tool could be created, the metal had to be purified. With rhythmic force, metalworkers hammered copper against stone anvils, heating it between each blow. This process, called annealing, softened the metal, allowing it to be shaped without breaking. Children watched quietly, elders supervised carefully. The transformation of earth into metal was not just technology, it was ritual. A copper tool represented more than craftsmanship. It was a symbol of connection to the land, to ancestors, to nature's hidden power. But perhaps the most fascinating part of this ancient industry is not the mining itself, but what came after. Once created, copper objects became part of a vast network of trade, stretching farther than anyone expected. Archaeologists have discovered Great Lakes copper in Indiana, Kentucky, Alabama, Louisiana, and even along the Gulf Coast. Some copper pieces traveled over 2,000 kilometers from their origin. This reveals something extraordinary. Early North America had a sophisticated exchange system long before modern maps were drawn. These routes were not random. They followed rivers, forest paths, and ancient trails later used by tribes like the Ojibwe and the Anishinaabe. But thousands of years earlier, people carried copper across these pathways not for war, but for peace, sharing, symbolism, and survival. Copper was often exchanged for obsidian, shells, flint, mica, and decorative stones from distant lands. Some tribes prized copper for its spiritual power, believing it came from the deep earth where ancient spirits dwelled. Others used it for ceremonial objects, burial offerings, or status symbols worn by leaders and healers. The metalworkers of the Great Lakes likely never met the people living thousands of kilometers away, yet their work, quiet, steady, and skilled, connected them all. This ancient exchange system built alliances and relationships, creating a web of communication long before writing existed. It was a network held together not by armies or empires, but by trust. The Copper Kings were the silent architects of this network, but what about their daily life? What kind of society produced such technological innovation? Archaeologists believe their communities were semi-nomadic. They followed seasonal food sources, living in small villages but returning to mining sites every year. Their homes were made of wood and bark, protected by forests that shielded them from harsh winds. Their diets came from fishing, hunting, and foraging. Lake Superior provided fish so abundant that nets made from plant fibers were enough to feed entire groups. In the forests, deer, moose, and bear roamed freely. Seasonal berries, nuts, and grains added richness to their meals. Life was difficult, but not primitive. Slowly, a picture emerges of a society built on cooperation. Men mined and hunted. Women gathered, crafted, and processed hides. Elders maintained knowledge. Children learned by watching, not by reading. And above all, they relied on the environment, understanding its rhythms, its dangers, and its gifts. But even in this stable world, challenges were constant. Winter was the greatest enemy. Temperatures plunged, storms swept across the lakes with terrifying speed. Food ran scarce, yet somehow these people not only survived, they innovated. They built tools sharper than bone and more durable than stone. They mastered heat, metal, and trade. They created a system that lasted thousands of years. And some evidence suggests they may have interacted with early mound-building cultures farther south, perhaps exchanging ideas alongside goods. This raises an even deeper question: how far did their influence reach? One of the greatest mysteries arises when we examine the sheer scale of the copper removed from the ancient mines. Even after accounting for artifacts discovered across North America, the remaining amount is enormous. Some copper masses weighed several tons. Some sites indicate sustained extraction lasting centuries. And yet, where is all that metal? Did it corrode away? Was it buried in places we haven't excavated? Or was it transported in ways we still don't understand? Some researchers propose that the trade network extended far beyond the Mississippi Valley, possibly reaching the early civilizations of the Caribbean or Central America. Mainstream archaeology is cautious with such theories, but one thing is certain: the mining activity was far larger than previously imagined. This suggests a society with organization, leadership, and long-term planning, qualities associated with advanced cultures. But because they left no monuments or stone temples, history overlooked them. The Copper Kings were not empire builders in the traditional sense. Their power came from knowledge, not conquest, from resource mastery, not warfare. Yet, like all great civilizations, they faced a turning point. Something around 1000 BCE shifted dramatically. Trade diminished, tools changed in style. And copper, once the lifeblood of the northern world, lost its central place. The reasons remain hidden in time: climate change, population movement, resource depletion, cultural transformation. Perhaps new beliefs replaced old traditions. Perhaps new groups took over the land. Perhaps the mines simply became too dangerous or too deep. What we do know is this: a civilization that had thrived for millennia began to fade, but their legacy, their innovation did not vanish. It was absorbed into the cultures that followed. Handed down in stories, rituals, and techniques that shaped the identity of future tribes, their world did not collapse, it simply transformed. Yet their disappearance left one final question that historians still struggle to answer. Were the Copper Kings the only metal workers in ancient North America? Or were they part of something much larger, an interconnected system we have barely begun to understand? To answer that, we must explore their final era, the decline of their mines, and the echoes of their legacy in later indigenous traditions. Their story is not finished.
As the centuries passed, the people of the Great Lakes continued their traditions, shaping copper into tools and ornaments, trading it across the land, and teaching each generation the ancient knowledge of fire and metal. But slowly, quietly, a transformation began, a shift so subtle that no one living through it could have understood its significance. Yet today, that shift stands at the center of one of America's greatest archaeological mysteries. For thousands of years, copper shaped their world. But by around 1000 BCE, something caused the once thriving copper industry to weaken. The mines that once echoed with the sound of hammering became silent. The trails used by traders grew cold. The networks that once carried copper across vast distances began to fade. Why? The answers lie buried in fragments, small hints scattered across time. Some researchers believe the environment changed dramatically. Lake levels rose and fell, forests transformed, and animal populations shifted. The Great Lakes region is one of the most climate-sensitive areas in North America. Even a slight temperature change could alter hunting patterns, migration routes, and available resources. If winters grew harsher, communities might have spent more time hunting and gathering, less time mining. If summers grew shorter, the fire-setting technique, requiring dry wood, may have become more difficult. And if food became scarce, survival would replace innovation. But climate alone cannot explain the scale of the decline. Something else was happening, deeper and more powerful. Archaeologists have noticed a major cultural shift around this time. New pottery styles appeared. Burial traditions changed. Villages became more permanent instead of seasonal. Farming, though limited, began to influence the diets of some communities farther south. In this changing world, copper may have lost its symbolic value. It may have shifted from a sacred material to a practical one. No longer the center of ceremonial life, no longer the marker of status. When a culture's values change, its technologies change with it. And gradually, copper working became less common. Tools became thinner, simpler, less refined. Trade routes focused more on regional goods. The long-distance copper network weakened, replaced by localized economies. This was not a collapse. It was a transformation, a slow cultural evolution that reshaped an entire region. But there is still one unanswered question. What happened to the massive amount of copper removed from the mines? The volume is staggering, far more than what has been recovered. After thousands of years, even pure copper can transform, break down, or vanish beneath soil layers. Others argue that countless artifacts remain undiscovered, buried in riverbeds, swamps, and forests. But there is a third possibility, one that continues to spark debate. Could it be that early North American copper traveled farther than we think? For years, a controversial theory has suggested a connection between the old copper culture and early civilizations across the Atlantic. While mainstream archaeologists reject the idea of Bronze Age trade between North America and Europe, the mystery remains intriguing. because of the sheer volume of mined copper. Yet, even without far-reaching theories, there is one truth we cannot deny. The scale of mining suggests an organized society, one with leadership, planning, and long-term memory. Thousands of mining pits do not form by accident. They require knowledge shared across generations. They require communities willing to return year after year, investing time and energy into a single resource. This tells us something powerful. The Copper Kings may not have built palaces or written books, but they built something just as remarkable, a technological tradition that lasted longer than many ancient empires. But what about their spiritual world? What did copper mean to them? Although we cannot read their beliefs in texts, we can see them in artifacts. Some copper objects were offerings buried with the dead. Others were shaped into symbols, spirals, rings, stylized animals, each carrying meaning we can only guess at. To these people, copper was not just metal. It was a gift from the earth, shaped by fire, alive, powerful, spiritual. They believed lakes, rivers, and mountains held spirits. They believed natural metals carried protection. They believed craftsmanship was a sacred duty. The metal workers were not merely artisans, they were guardians of knowledge. And even after the mines quieted, their spiritual connection to copper lived on. Later tribes, including the Ojibwe, still held copper in ceremonial importance. Stories told of powerful objects in sacred places along the lakes where ancient spirits resided. This hints at something profound. Even when the technology faded, the memory did not. So what remains of the Copper Kings today? Their artifacts, scattered across museums and private collections. Their mines, now moss-covered kits deep in northern forests. Their legacy, hidden in the tools of modern descendants whose ancestors carried that knowledge forward. But their greatest legacy is the challenge they leave for modern archaeology. Because their story reminds us of a simple truth. Civilization does not always look like what we expect. It does not require stone temples or written laws. It does not require armies or kings. It does not require cities carved into the earth. Sometimes, civilization is quiet. It lives in tradition, in craft, in community. It grows not through conquest, but through knowledge. The Copper Kings were one such civilization, one that shaped North America long before history began keeping score. And even now, their story continues to evolve. Each year, new tools are discovered, new pits are uncovered, new data, radiocarbon dates, chemical analyses, reveals that the copper industry may have been even older and more extensive than previously imagined. Far from being a forgotten chapter, the old copper culture might be one of the longest-lasting technological traditions in ancient North America. Their story is not merely a mystery. It is a reminder of how adaptable, creative, and ambitious early humans were. People who lived in harsh, unforgiving environments. People who lacked written language but possessed deep intelligence. People who built networks across the continent using nothing but skill, determination, and fire. These were the Copper Kings. Faded, but its echoes remain, in the land, in the metal, and in the enduring human instinct to innovate. Long before European ships touched American shores, long before maps carved borders into the land, North America was home to thriving kingdoms. Great cities rose from canyon walls, earthwork pyramids towered above the plains, and complex societies built networks of trade, astronomy, agriculture, and architecture unmatched anywhere else in the ancient world. And then, they vanished. Not in a single moment, not through war or conquest, but through something far more powerful and far more unforgiving: climate. Today we explore one of the most dramatic disappearances in ancient history, how climate shifts, mega-droughts, and internal fractures erased entire civilizations from the American landscape long before 1492. To understand what happened, we must begin where the Earth itself keeps its memories, in the rings of ancient trees, the layers of lake sediment, and the dust trapped deep inside caves. These natural archives tell a story no written book ever recorded, a story of drought so deep, so long, and so severe that entire cultures simply could not survive. The year the rain stopped. Imagine you're living in a thriving settlement in the 12th century. The fields are golden with maize. Rivers flow steadily. Trade routes hum with life. Festivals fill the plazas. The kingdom feels eternal. Then the first warning arrives. a growing dryness in the wind, clouds that drift away without rain, rivers lowering inch by inch. At first, no one panics. Droughts happen, they always have. But this one is different. Months pass, then years, then decades. Tree ring studies today show that parts of North America endured one of the most devastating drought periods in 10,000 years, a mega-drought that lasted so long it reshaped entire ecosystems. For societies built on agriculture, this was not just inconvenient, it was catastrophic. Crops withered, storage pits emptied, animals migrated away, diseases spread. When the water disappears, the kingdom soon follows. The great cities begin to fracture. This is what struck civilizations like the ancestral Puebloans, the Mississippian mound builders of Cahokia, and dozens of smaller chiefdoms across the continent. Their cities did not fall overnight. They cracked slowly like a drying riverbed, splitting along lines of resource scarcity and internal tension. As food became scarce, the social balance shattered. Leaders lost legitimacy. Trade alliances broke. Families fled. Communities that once cooperated began to compete. Some people moved in search of safer lands. Others clung to traditions, even as the world changed around them. A kingdom's greatest strength, its population, suddenly became its greatest burden. The more people there were to feed, the faster collapse grew. The silent enemy, environmental change. One of the most powerful forces behind these collapses was the shifting of rainfall patterns. Studies reveal that around the 1100s to 1300s, atmospheric systems rearranged themselves across the continent. Storm tracks moved. Snowpacks shrank. In the southwest, rainfall fell to historic lows. In the Mississippi Valley, floods alternated with devastating droughts. In the Great Basin, water sources dried up completely. Civilizations that had mastered the land for centuries suddenly found their technical knowledge obsolete. Canals failed. Reservoirs cracked. Fields lay barren. Nature was rewriting the rules faster than humans could adapt. Migration, the last hope of survival. When drought reaches its peak, there are only two choices: stay and starve, or leave and live. Most chose to leave. Mass migration spanning hundreds of miles swept across North America. People abandoned cliff cities, mound complexes, river kingdoms, and trading hubs that had existed for generations. From the ancestral Puebloans leaving Chaco and Mesa Verde, to the decline of Cahokia's once teeming metropolis, to the dispersal of Great Lakes copper cultures, these movements reshaped the map of ancient North America. Groups blended, new alliances formed, old identities dissolved, new cultures emerged from the fragments. This is why the descendants of these ancient peoples, today's Native American nations, carry mixed cultural lineages. Their ancestors survived by moving, adapting, and rebuilding. Internal collapse, when kingdoms turn on themselves. Drought alone does not collapse a civilization. Humans help it along. As conditions worsened, societies turned inward. Some scholars believe that factional rivalries increased. Others argue that religious authority weakened. Some communities may have abandoned leaders they believed had lost the favor of the spirits. In highly ritualistic societies, spiritual failure was political failure. When prayers failed to bring rain, when ceremonies no longer ensured harvest, faith in leadership evaporated. Conflicts grew, settlements splintered, families migrated in different directions. Collapse is rarely a single dramatic event. It is dozens of small fractures happening at once, until the entire structure crumbles. The echoes that remain: civilizations still stand, silent witnesses to a forgotten climate war. Cliff palaces carved into canyons, earthwork pyramids larger than those in Egypt, abandoned plazas once filled with music, trade, and ritual. They are not the traces of defeated peoples. They are the bones of societies that adapted, moved, and transformed in the face of impossible conditions. Their descendants are alive today. Their stories survived in oral tradition. Their resilience is written into the cultural memory of dozens of tribes across the continent. But one question still remains: were these collapses inevitable? Or could these civilizations have survived if the rains had returned sooner? To answer that, we must go deeper, into the final days of these kingdoms, the turning points that sealed their fate, and the environmental evidence that proves the drought was unlike anything seen before or since. Just about the past. It is a warning for the future. To understand how entire kingdoms unraveled under the weight of drought, we must journey deeper into the final centuries before their disappearance, when the signs of collapse grew unavoidable, but solutions grew impossibly thin. Imagine a society built on stability. For generations, rainfall had been reliable, rivers steady, and harvests abundant. People believed their rituals kept balance between sky and earth. Leaders, priests, and astronomers all shared one unshakable truth: nature would keep its promises. But when the rain stopped, the promise broke, and with it, the foundations of these kingdoms began to shake. The first cracks: water becomes power. In every civilization touched by the Great Drought, water became more than a resource. It became political power. Those who controlled reservoirs, springs, and irrigation canals became the new rulers. In some regions, archaeologists can still see the evidence. Reservoirs fortified like fortresses, wells surrounded by defensive walls, drought shrines built near dried-up rivers. Water dictated survival. Families began moving closer to the few remaining sources. Villages condensed, tensions increased. As water levels dropped, status and hierarchy shifted. Leaders who once ruled through ritual were now challenged by those who controlled resources. Cracks formed in the social order. Famine, the slow, silent enemy. While water shortages created political stress, famine created emotional collapse. A drought does not kill crops in one season. It kills them slowly, through soil cracking, through roots failing to reach moisture, through heat that bakes the land before fruit can grow. Storage pits, once filled with surplus maize, began to empty. Families ate through reserves meant to last years. Communities rationed whatever remained. And eventually, even that ran out. Famine does not stay quiet. It weakens bodies, then weakens trust, then weakens the very institutions that once held kingdoms together. People who had lived in unity for centuries suddenly became competitors for the last remaining grain. Some villages may have banded together stronger than ever. Others likely descended into conflict. The archaeological record shows both. Abandonment, a kingdom on the move. When food and water disappear, one option remains: migration. This is why so many massive cities were suddenly abandoned. Not because they were destroyed, but because they could no longer sustain life. The patterns are striking. Chaco Canyon emptied. Mesa Verde was deserted. Cahokia's population plummeted. The Great Basin settlements scattered. The Mississippi chiefdoms dissolved. These were not isolated failures. They were part of a continent-wide response to unprecedented climate change. The ritual crisis, when the gods fall silent. In the most religiously structured societies, climate collapse became spiritual collapse. When prayers failed, faith broke. When ceremonies brought no rain, doubt spread. When drought proved stronger than ritual, leaders were blamed. In some cultures, religious leaders lost their authority. In others, new leaders emerged, claiming new visions. Some communities developed new rites specifically designed for drought. Archaeological evidence of mass ceremonial burning, abandoned ceremonial plazas, and shattered ritual pottery suggests deep cultural upheaval. It was not just the climate changing, it was identity changing. Violence and defense, the final struggle for survival. As conditions worsened, conflict increased. Archaeologists find more defensive walls, more fortified settlements, more evidence of raids and territorial wars. These were not empires fighting for expansion. These were starving societies fighting for survival. The Great Drought did not create violence. It magnified every weakness already present. Rivalries, resource tension, cultural divisions. Civilizations that once stood unified under shared traditions, now fractured under pressure. The last generations, children born into collapse. The most heartbreaking part of this history is imagining those last generations. They were born into a world where rivers were shallow, fields barren, and hope unstable. Their elders told stories of abundance they never saw. Their parents struggled to provide food they rarely tasted. Their leaders prayed for rain that never arrived. As conditions worsened, children became the first to suffer. Malnutrition signs appear in skeletal remains from these periods, shorter bone growth, enamel defects, signs of chronic hunger. Entire generations grew up knowing only crisis. And when a culture's children grow up in collapse, the culture itself cannot survive. Cultural memory, transform, don't disappear. But this does not mean these civilizations vanished, they transformed. When Chaco was abandoned, its people did not disappear. They became the ancestors of the Hopi, Zuni, and many Pueblo tribes. When Cahokia declined, its lineage spread into dozens of later Mississippian groups. When Great Basin societies dispersed, their descendants carried new hybrid traditions into the next era. Collapse is not extinction. Collapse is transition. Climate forced these kingdoms to scatter, but it did not erase their identity. Their stories live on. Their descendants live on. Their knowledge lives on. And today, many native nations still trace their origins to these migrations, proof that resilience is stronger than drought. Archaeology reveals one truth. Across tree rings, lake beds, cave dust, bones, pollen samples, and abandoned structures, the evidence points to one conclusion. Climate catastrophe. So intense, so prolonged, so widespread, that even the most advanced pre-Columbian civilizations could not withstand it. Mega-droughts lasting decades, flood cycles that destroyed farmland, temperature changes that altered entire ecosystems, shifts in storm patterns that broke agricultural systems. No society, ancient or modern, can thrive in conditions like these. The lost kingdoms were not defeated by war, not destroyed by invasion, not erased by a stronger enemy. They were undone by the sky itself, a warning written in the past. As we uncover the final moments of these great cultures, one haunting truth emerges. Their extinction is a prophecy, a reminder of how fragile civilization is when climate turns against us. We fear. They faced the disaster we still struggle to imagine, and their fate whispers a warning. A society survives only as long as its environment allows it. Next, we explore the final turning points, the last years, the last choices, and the archaeological evidence that reveals how these kingdoms met their end. Imagine a silence, so deep, so absolute, that even time seems to stop. That is what archaeologists felt when they uncovered the final layers of these vanished American civilizations. A silence that held the stories of millions who had once filled the continent with life, art, science, and astonishing engineering. But why did these great nations fall? Why did kingdoms that flourished for thousands of years disappear long before Columbus ever set foot on American soil? To find the answer, we must travel to the very edge of survival, to the years of the Great Drought, the final century, when the sky stopped giving. Tree ring records show something terrifying. Between 1100 and 1300 AD, the sky dried up. Rainfall collapsed. Rivers shrank. Fields turned to dust. For civilizations built on agriculture, this was the beginning of the end. The great cities of the southwest Puebloans could no longer feed their people. Food shortages turned into starvation. Starvation turned into unrest. And unrest turned into migration. Entire villages packed up and walked away, leaving behind the mighty cities carved deep into the canyon walls. Social cracks become civilizational earthquakes. When resources shrink, societies face impossible choices. Some communities tried to adapt. Another, archaeologists found signs of defensive walls, burned structures, rapid evacuations, mass migrations. This wasn't a single disaster. It was a chain reaction. Drought created hunger. Hunger created conflict. Conflict created collapse. And as kingdoms fractured, their knowledge, art, and history were scattered like dust in the wind. The land itself became the enemy. The Great Drought wasn't just about thirst. It brought crop failure, animal die-offs, unpredictable winters, massive wildfires, declining water tables. For ancient people with no access to modern engineering, such relentless environmental pressure was simply unbearable. Many kingdoms did not die slowly, they died suddenly. Cities were abandoned within years. Granaries left full. Tools dropped where they had been used last. Houses locked forever in the moment of departure. It is one of the greatest unsolved mysteries of archaeology. Not how they lived, but how they vanished so completely. A continent remembers. Even though the kingdoms fell, their memory lived on in the stories of indigenous nations across North America. Some speak of the time of leaving, the long dry winter, the journey of hungry children, the spirits who guard the empty cities. These aren't just myths. They are echoes of a real history, a history of survival, resilience, and adaptation. Their descendants still walk among us today, carrying the knowledge of how their ancestors endured the greatest environmental collapse in North American history. And so the question remains: what happens when the climate changes faster than a civilization can adapt? It happened before. It can happen again. But the story of these lost kingdoms is not just a warning. It is a message of strength. Because even after drought, collapse, and abandonment, the spirit of the people survived. And through the ruins they left behind, their voices still whisper to us across the centuries. We were here. We lived. We built. We endured.